BMW has finally begun to take EVs seriously again, with models appearing across multiple segments. This is the iX3, a medium-sized SUV that's a bit smaller than the iX, but with so many other cars in this class to compete with, can BMW do enough to win? Before we get down to the details though, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Unlike the i4 and iX, the iX3 is not a pure electric platform. In fact, it's essentially an X3 SUV with an electric drivetrain. The dimensions and appearance are pretty much the same as an X3. Our all-black sample with black tinted privacy glass at the rear and glossy black rims gives a decidedly mean appearance. If you're a rap artist or minor Russian oligarch, you'll like the look of this car. I say minor Russian oligarch because this is based on an X3, so it's not as big as the Range Rovers or Mercedes G-Wagons that major Russian oligarchs tend to use for transportation. The only really obvious difference between the iX3 and the X3 is the kidney grille not being an actual air intake. It's also not as big as on the latest BMWs. This is a good thing because current BMW designs really suffer from enlarged kidneys that could lead to emotional problems and inflamed derision. All iX3s come with the same drivetrain, a 286 horsepower motor plus an 80 kilowatt hour battery with 74 kilowatt hours of usable capacity. There are two trim levels available, M Sport and M Sport Pro, for £3 extra. The equipment level is excellent in both. The car we have here is actually the Premier Edition Pro, which was a spec the iX3 launched with, but you can't order it anymore. It's the M Sport Pro, but with a few differences. All cars come with folding wing mirrors, leather seats with the front heating, driving assistant professional, which includes adaptive cruise control, wireless phone charging and parking assistant, which has some level of auto park ability. The M Sport Pro turns the parking assistant into the Plus version, adds a head-up display, acoustic glass, gesture control, and an upgraded Harman Kardon sound system. All cars come with a heat pump as well, so range shouldn't be too adversely affected in cold weather. The basic M Sport wheels are 19-inch, but the M Sport Pro gets 20-inch rims. These entirely black wheels were only available with the Premier Edition Pro. There are no other wheel options. The indications that this is electric are pretty subtle, like this I logo on the side of the car, and a blue circle around the BMW logos. The basic colour for the iX3 is this black with grey, white or blue as free alternative paint options. Unusually for a German car, there are actually very few options that cost extra for this car, apart from the blue BMW laser lights, which enhance the existing LED headlights with a 500 metre range. This pack costs £1,500. Otherwise, the choice is either fully loaded with the M Sport, or for £3,000 more, all the toys BMW has to offer with the M Sport Pro. We do like the way this car unlocks as you approach and just reach out. There you go. Let's take a look inside. The phrase I would use to describe the BMW iX3's interior is well appointed. For the seats, this black Vanasca leather with contrasting stitching is standard. Either you can have brown with blue stitching or white with grey stitching, neither of which cost extra. There are also choices of two shades of aluminium or this gloss black interior trim. These seats are really comfortable for long journeys, and there's electric adjustment plus memory controls as standard. This high central console does make it feel a little bit cramped in here. So there's this blind covering up this area, and I really thought this was a cute little coffee cup that BMW had given us, but look, it's an ashtray, and you actually get here a cigarette lighter, something I've not seen in a car for many years. So if you're a cigar smoking minor Russian oligarch, you're in luck. Otherwise, if you're not using the ashtray, you get a couple of cup holders and this wireless charging port for a single phone. There's also a USB Type A port if you want to plug in via a wire. Underneath this central armrest, there's a sizable cubby. And I don't know if you can see, there's a USB Type C port in there and a little cavity for you putting your small change, if you can remember what coins are still. The glove compartment is reasonably sized, certainly big enough for your bodyguard to keep their Glock in. Not enough room for a shotgun unless it's sawn off though. Rear seat space is decent if not outstanding. There is a fair amount of head space, but the knee space is perhaps a little bit cramped if you're a 6-footer. This middle seat is reasonably wide, but it does unfortunately have a bit of a kind of transmission tunnel down here, with this, for a reason for which we have no idea because there is no transmission. If you don't have a middle seat rear passenger, you can pull their backrest down, and this is really quite nicely designed. This is a wide but rather shallow cubby that's hidden underneath here, and we rather like the design of this. Pops open, you get a couple of cup holders, and goes back down again. Middle seat passengers benefit from their own separate air vents, and you also get actually controls over the air conditioning because this is a tri-zone air conditioning system. And right down the bottom here are a couple of USB-C ports for their devices. There are magazine holders in the back for your oligarch kids to keep their copies of Mafia or whatever it is kids read these days. Both rear outer seats have ISOFIX points for child car seats, but you don't get any in the front. You also get this full-length panoramic sunroof, which does give rear seat passengers a bit more of a sense of space in the back. One other extra on the rear seats is they also have a recline option. Another really great standard feature on all cars is this kick release for the boot. As you can see, it works pretty well. I didn't need to kick in any kind of really extravagant fashion. And you get a sizable boot here. This is actually 510 litres, which is about 40 litres less than the conventional engine X3, but still that's not too bad. Underneath here is a small bit of extra space. Unfortunately not quite enough for your charge cables, but you get all the kind of emergency kits like a tyre inflator. There's a pocket on the side here, but actually on the right hand side, if you would like to go that side, Mr. Cameraman, there is no actual pocket, just a cavity. And then you get this here, which actually covers up a 12-volt power supply if you want to have maybe you know, powering your fridge for the champagne that you have in the back of your car. So at first, when you first get this car, you're going to have real problems figuring out how you actually get this blind off. I had to look it up on YouTube. There's a button hidden in there. You press that and then out that comes. Actually, it's really, really easy. And you may have noticed that the split on this seat is actually 40-20-40, so I can pull this middle bit down. And you can put a long item, maybe if you want to put a tall prisoner in the back of this car, they'd fit really nicely. You'd still be able to have the two bodyguards in the rear. There's another nice convenience feature. To drop the rear seats down, you just pull this lever and down they go. And there's one on the other side for the other seat. Unfortunately, you can't press the button to make them come back up. You can see this is a pretty large boot. It's 1,560 litres. Nowhere near as big as maybe the Tesla Model Y or the Skoda Enyaq, but it's 40 litres less than a standard X3, just as it was with the seats up. But that's still a boot the same sort of size as a mid-sized estate car like an Audi A4 Avant or a C-Series estate. This car can also tow. For an extra £850 you can get a tow bar direct from BMW. That allows you to tow 750 kilograms, braked or unbraked. Unfortunately that's not enough really for a caravan, but it could be good enough for a trailer. These roof rails have a capacity of 100 kilograms though, which is decent. If you are a minor Russian oligarch and you need to pack your boot full of ex-rivals, it's definitely up there. Since this car isn't actually a pure BEV, there isn't actually a frunk. This plastic thing here, you can't actually open it. That net 74 kilowatt hour battery allows up to 285 miles of WLTP range, which is a bit less than a Tesla Model Y, but a bit more than some other SUVs in the class, like the Volvo XC40. However, that standard heat pump will help, as we said, in cold weather. Without doubt, we think that the iX3 has the nicest looking charge ports of any BEV we've seen. You get 11 kilowatt AC charging, which will enable 100% charge in 8 hours, although it'll be more like 12 hours on a standard 7 kilowatt home wallbox. The DC charging capability is decent too, hitting 155 kilowatts. This means it will take just 31 minutes to go from 10 to 80% capacity, assuming you find a fast enough public charger. The bundled BMW charging account allows you to charge at over 170,000 different charging locations across Europe, including the Ionity ones and BP+. On that elusive 14p per kilowatt hour electricity supply, you're going to be paying about 3.6p a mile, which is decent but not amazing. Unlike the new i4 and iX, the iX3 has a typical BMW interior where controls are concerned. The steering wheel design is still used on these cars, with cruise control buttons on the left, plus media, voice and phone controls on the right. There are discrete stalks for indicators on the left and windscreen wipers on the right, unlike a Tesla. Turning the car on involves this blue button on the dashboard. This gear stick-like thing, you push forward for reverse, but you have to press this button on the side. You pull back for drive, and actually if you want to select a higher regenerative mode, B mode, you push it sideways, and that gives you almost single pedal driving. There's a button here for selecting auto hold, and there is a separate electric parking brake, but you can really ignore that if you want to. You get separate buttons for Eco, Pro, Comfort and Sport modes, and these also change the adaptive damping and the steering accordingly. This knob on the left lets you control the media screen and is surrounded by buttons to help you get to functions faster. But as you have a touchscreen, you don't need to use it if you prefer directly interacting with the display. The dashboard instrumentation is a digital panel with speed in numerical form on the left and also with dial form, plus a power regen displayed on the right. There are sundry car warnings also on the right, and the all-important battery meter on the left, showing percentage capacity as well as estimated range. You also get some sat-nav functions in the middle. You also get this HUD as standard on the top car, the M Sport Pro and this Premier Edition. You'll see it gives you speed and the speed limit, and when you're driving it gives you the next speed limit and some really useful satellite navigation directions as well. You notice there is a full set of discrete controls for the stereo, with some presets for the radio and a complete set of controls for the air conditioning as well. One thing you don't get with the iX3 that the i4 and iX have is BMW's new curved dashboard and media display. Instead, this separate media display is smaller at 12.3 inches. It does have a connected sat-nav, although we find these the colours in that BMW uses a little bit too busy, and it's very hard to actually see the details because there's so much going on there. So you can go through, you can listen to radio, and you've got media connections, Bluetooth. This does support Apple CarPlay and the Google equivalent as well. You can connect your phone and use that hands-free, obviously. Get the full screen for the sat nav. You can search with the sat nav from with keywords. With there is obviously the postcodes that you can use there. If you go into the car, you can look at the vehicle status, tyre pressure, all kinds of stuff is available there. Go back, and you can actually control your charging. Set the limit other than 100%, which is handy. You can set it to 80%. There's your Android Auto and CarPlay, and you can actually install different apps, including Alexa, the drive recorder, which is another capability of the advanced features on this car. You can actually use the cameras as a kind of surveillance system when you're driving, as well as a dash cam. And you can even use this QR code to book a service with the phone app. You expect all BMWs to give you a solid driving experience, and things get off to a promising start when you look at the specs. The motor is quite powerful with 286 horsepower. This enables the iX3 to hit 62 miles per hour in 6.8 seconds, which is decent by general SUV standards, but there are quite a lot of faster competitors. For example, the Ford Mustang Mach-E, Volvo XC40 and Tesla Model Y. This car is also rear-wheel drive, so there's no torque steer under acceleration, and the steering is reassuringly precise. However, this car weighs nearly 2.3 tons, which means it's quite wallowy round corners compared to, for example, the Tesla Model Y. On the other hand, it feels a lot more planted in corners than the original Audi e-tron. Sport mode in the M Sport Pro adds these Hans Zimmer sounds when you're accelerating. Spooky. Adaptive suspension is standard, so you can vary the ride with mode. Even in sport mode, this car soaks up the bumps really well. It's also pretty accomplished at motorway speeds. Overall, a decently engaging drive for an SUV weighing over 2 tons. Whichever version of the iX3 you go for, you get pretty much all the safety toys. There's automatic braking, now a safety requirement if you want a decent Euro NCAP rating. Blind spot detection throws up an orange triangle on the wing mirror to warn you in case you miss something. There's lane keep assist, which I found a little bit too intrusive at times. Adaptive cruise control with traffic stop start is standard as well. The parking camera is pretty comprehensive and well thought out. The one difference between the two trims is the M Sport Pro comes with Parking Assistant Plus, which adds a more elaborate sensor package for parking. This also gives you a more inclusive surround view when reversing. Unfortunately, this car has one major drawback, and it's the price. The M Sport starts at just under $61,000 and the M Sport Pro at just under $64,000. This Premier Edition Pro car was $61,770, which was a little bit more reasonable considering that it comes with pretty much all the M Sport Pro kit. But it's still not cheap when you consider that the M Sport Pro is in the price territory of the BMW i4 M50 or indeed a Tesla Model 3 Performance. The Tesla Model Y, Mustang Mach-E and Volvo XC40 are all quite a bit cheaper. However, unlike most BMWs, these cars are so fully loaded that you won't be paying any extra on top of that, at least, to add any extra features. Nevertheless, you do need to be a minor Russian oligarch to afford this car, but at least not a major one. Insurance groups are also pretty high, 44 for the M Sport and 45 for the M Sport Pro. There's a basic 3-year warranty including paintwork, although anti-corrosion is 12 years. The battery has an 8-year 100,000 mile warranty, but they don't state this percentage. It's actually not too bad driving around in really heavy traffic like this. The only problem with it is this is a big car and you have to be really careful when cyclists like that decide that they're going to be right in the middle of the road. This car also deals with speed bumps incredibly well for such a big, heavy car with sport suspension. Right, well now we're actually on a highway. Let's see what it accelerates like. You can see it's still got that EV pickup. It's just not quite as fast as some of the most ludicrously quick EVs that we've tested. We also find the HUD almost essential because typical BMW, that sat-nav is very colourful and hard to see what it's actually telling you to do, whereas it's very clear on the HUD. So let's try out that reversing camera. So you can see you get a really nice rear view, plus you also get a 360 top view, which together makes it easy to angle yourself properly if you approached it right anyway. You can't fault the BMW iX3 for quality and prestige. This car has the solid build and sense of class you expect from this brand. It's also extremely well specified whichever trim level you go for without having to pay any extras on top of the base price. But you will still need to have the income of a small, formerly state-owned oil company to afford one. If you can live without the BMW brand and luxury, there are cheaper alternatives. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.